Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. And my guest today is legendary Shirley Paden. Welcome to my channel.
Thank you very much, Irina. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, I told you before we started that I've been a long time fan of yours. I've been following your journey for quite a while. I watched everything that exists on YouTube with you.
Good.
And I even asked you, why would you agree to be on my channel? Because you've done some big name interviews out there.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about what knitting means to you. How did it all started? Who taught you and how it developed?
My grandmother taught me to knit when I was about 8 years old. During a summer visit, she lived in another state, and I was always so fascinated by watching things grow from her needles. So it was like magic to me. She was a really amazing knitter and crocheter, and just had this interest. That was one grandmother. My other grandmother was this amazing quilter. So there was this history of handmade artwork around me. After I had major surgery, I went off to college. I went into my career in the computer industry. I put my knitting down. I didn't think about it. And then I tell this story, and it's a true story, of walking past a yarn shop near my job every day, never even looking at it. And then one of the women in my office was having a baby, and she was learning to knit, and she was making a blanket, and she asked me how she could bind off, and I helped her to bind off, and it all came back. I went to that yarn shop and bought yarn, and over that next year, I think I probably was their best customer. I was buying yarn every week. I spent so much money and so much time, and they became really like my wonderful, wonderful friends, and this whole interest in knitting just reemerged. Then I had major surgery, and afterwards, my husband was saying, "What did I feel I wanted to do?" And I said, "Well, I think I want to be a knitwear designer." And then, the rest is history. I laid out a business plan, and here I am.
Well, you know what I find interesting? You have similar story to mine, because my grandma taught me how to knit over one summer break as well. And I really just needed for couple of weeks that I was with her. She showed me some basics. And then I came home with the ball of yarn and needles. And my mom was like, don't you have something better to do? And that was the end of it,
Yeah.
But I remember when I started knitting again, as an adult, it was almost like a muscle memory. I knew what I was doing immediately. There was not even even though I haven't knitted for 40 years, basically, it came so fast. It came so easy. It was in my hands. It was in my blood. Did you feel the same way, after the break, that it was just so natural to you?
Yeah, it was just sitting there in my mind, the knitting, but I wasn't an advanced knitter at that point. I was just, I had learned to knit as a child. So I had, and I wasn't, a girl genius. So I had a basic understanding of it, and I had to teach myself the rest of it. And that is what became fascinating. Just opening, it was like a peep into the curtain when I went into that yarn shop, and then opening, the curtain to this entire world of lace and color and cables. And, it was just amazing. Someone asked me yesterday if I felt that there was anything else that I could learn with knitting. I said, if I got 4 more lives, I probably wouldn't learn it all. But I love to learn. It's fascinating. There was a whole world that was open that I had not known as a child. I knew knitting, and I couldn't burrow all that well. So I knew knitting and casting on, and it was the child's cast on. It wasn't even the long tail. It was the one that grows.
Right.
I teach 32 cast-ons in my cast-ons class now. But at that point, that was all I knew. So it was wonderful. It was a whole door that opened to this amazing the stairs that I could walk up and learning this amazing craft.
Well, one of the interviews I watched, you mentioned something that I was thinking this is so unusual. I never heard it. You said something about brand new knitters coming to you and asking if they can join the design along, and you telling them that knitting and designing is not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that? Because to me, this is like, I'm coming from the way of thinking that you need to be a really advanced knitter to get into designing, to know how to achieve that idea that you have in your head and how to make it true. What do you mean by that?
Well, we've got a lot of testimonials out there now for people who were doing their first design project who came through our design alongs, because we walk you through it. We walk you through the 4 steps, and you don't have to be an expert knitter. You can have not even made a garment, really. There are no prerequisites for having an artistic ability. And so some people just come to life with it, and they have ideas in their mind. They can sketch, they can think. So we walk them through the 4 steps of the design process, and tell them to run. And that is, we for the design alongs, for example, we start with saying, okay, this is the thought process. Just write down everything that you want to be on your garment. Think about the garment, give it a profile, give it a personality, and then look at those and make a sketch. You don't have to be a great artist. Just make a sketch. Some people use sketching software. Some people just make a sketch, but you know what you want. And then, you know, swatch. Select a fabric and select a pattern stitch that will bring that design idea to life. And when I say swatch, I don't mean like make one swatch. You may make 5, you may make 8, whatever. But look at everything. This is what you want. This is how you feel you want it to move. You see it in drape. You see it on your sketch. And now let's look at the pattern stitch and see how that's going to work. And that drives your fabric. So now you've got your thought process, you've got the fabric selection process, and we're walking you through all this, remember. And then you move on, and we help you to go into the actual preparation process. This is the prep for knitting. It's the most important. This is the chopping and cutting part after you read the recipe. And so now we take you through laying out your schematic. And these are all the steps in KDW, which is Knitwear Design Workshop, and working through the schematic, taking the measurements, making sure that's right, balancing your pattern. Because once you select the fabric and you do the swatch, then we teach you what the swatch really means and making a meaningful swatch. And so you start with that. So now you've got everything. You've got your thought, you know where you're going, you've got your sketch, you've got your swatch, you've got your schematic. And then, we teach you how to lay that all out, put it all together, and we let you go and you start to knit it. And each of those steps are checked. So if you've never done anything but knit, 2 things, you can still do that, because you've worn garments, you live in the world, you've seen things you like. Everyone has seen fashion, and that's it. You don't need advanced skills to be able to design.
Oftentimes designers will start with accessories. So And there are designers who only do accessories, who don't
Mm-hmm.
want to hear about garments because
Mm-hmm.
they think it's becoming too complicated, it's too involved, all people in different sizes and shapes.
Mm-hmm.
How do you encourage designers to step outside of their comfort zone?
You know, you have to have that desire, and you have to, you know, the whole purpose of Knitwear Design Workshop and all that I do is to empower people. You know, not to think about having to just hang on to a pattern if you want to make a garment. Everybody has their own way of what they want to do, of what makes them happy. And it's all about being happy and loving what you do with your hands, because you're putting your own, you know, blood, sweat, and tears into whether you're making a shawl or making a blanket or making gloves or socks or whatever. You know, everybody goes in a whole different direction. That's what makes the whole industry very interesting. But if you want to make a garment, and if you're making accessories because you're frightened to make a garment, then I say just take the leap. You know, read through Knitwear Design Workshop. The Kindle version is $9.99. You know, so it's not a complicated story, and just follow, sort of think about it and follow along, and just walk through the steps. We start with just a rectangle, and then we build on that for, you know, double taper, single taper, necklines, all the things that you'd want to do. But my thoughts are that I say this to people in my classes, everything you've ever done in life, and most of us have lived, you know, if you count the days, we've lived a lot of days, you bring with you wherever you go. And you bring that into this as well. You've cooked, you've done this, you've done that. You've knitted, whether you've made socks or whatever. So you bring all that knowledge with you. You don't even realize the knowledge that you have in. And it's usually a very wonderful journey, because I've never, as I said, I teach a lot of techniques classes, 20 different techniques classes. And I've never seen people take ownership of a project like they do when they design.
When I'm hearing the 4 steps to design,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds daunting. Like it sounds like a lot. It sounds like you have to go through this step and that step and do the 5 to 8 to whatever amount of swatches, right? To get, like, a lot of people are impatient and they want to, like, they have this light bulb moment of the design idea and they want to jump in and have that garment done. How do you explain, like, the necessity of taking these steps and what it does, like, in the long run? Can people skip the steps? Is it necessary to take all of them?
Look, this is your handmade artwork. This is your handmade artwork. You know, it's like I say, finishing, for example, when people come into the finishing class, I say finishing is not knitting. It's a different art.
Right.
You know, designing is not knitting. It's a different art. There are people who design who never knit. You don't have to knit the piece because you designed it. You can hand that piece out. I hand a lot of my pieces out because I can't sit here knitting all my life. It's understanding how to pull that together. Everyone, for everyone, my method is not for everyone. You know, some people come to my class, and I had this conversation with someone yesterday who does everything just by ear. It's like a concert pianist who has studied and who reads the notes and understands it, and someone else who just hears it and who plays by ear. And if they can do that, that is another kind of a gift.
Right.
People who come to my class who can just design and have gorgeous things, I tell them don't take any more classes from me because it's going to ruin their gift. They don't need all this. I can't do it without seeing mathematically how things come together, and my method is architectural. So if nothing should be a pain, it should be a joy. And if this is something that makes you uncomfortable, like the math makes you uncomfortable or whatever, I have an app out there so you can sort of press some buttons. But when you go into a store and you buy a dress or a garment, you're making a garment. Someone has had to do that. There's all different sizes. They had to be graded. So now you have to do that, and you have to do it with string and 2 sticks. So you have to make, shape, and size all at the same time. And in my world, planning is everything. So if you want to have a really good end result, you don't want to rip it out and start again. Like I say, if you saw an architect build, by the time you see a building coming out of the ground, a lot of work has gone into that before. The knitting is the last step. The building is the last step. All the planning on that. It's the same here. All the planning that's gone into it before you start to knit. It's very necessary in my world. It's not necessary for everybody. Some people can just sit down and do it. And I say, it's a different way for them. And it's not, no way is wrong. Every way is different.
Well, another question I have in the same sort of line of question. A lot of young designers that I talk to will try to submit their designs to magazines, or will try to publish the designs. And they notice that the more complicated the design is, the less people will buy it, or the less magazines will get the submission, because they would say, this is a little too complicated for our readers. We want something that majority of people can do. How do you deal with that part of the design process? How do you encourage designers to be true to their artistic self and not to settle for just what sells?
Well, nobody has ever told me that my designs were too complex. Well, one editor did and said, your designs are always so complex. And then I said, hey, I can give you easy. And she said, I don't need easy from you. I have easy coming in from everyone else. Because it depends on, it's like anything else. You asked me, why did I come here when you didn't have as many followers? Every magazine's different, just like every interviewer is different. And so you find a place that matches who you are, or you publish on your own. Most magazines, or many of them, have some very advanced designers or very advanced knitters who follow them, who aren't interested if they don't put out a few more complex patterns. And so they have to mix that up. And it's not always a matter of, depending on what an editor wants. Because your pattern is not accepted in a magazine doesn't mean it's not good. And doesn't mean that you can't sell it in different ways, whether it's on Ravelry or wherever. So, you just keep moving. But don't dumb down. If whatever they want is not your way, then, just move on. And
Right.
Getting published in a magazine is not the end of the world. I mean, it all depends on what you want in life, and in your professional life as a designer.
Well, let's talk about you personally, because you saying that you self-taught basically everything that you know in knitting. How do you go from learning for yourself to feeling confident enough to announce to the world that you are an expert, and you're now teaching designers how to become a designer, and you're putting these books that became, treasures for all the knitters out there? How did that process happen?
Well, for me, that book was 12 years in the making. I started knitting again. I opened my business in 1992. I just celebrated 30 years of it. That book was not released until actually 2010. So I started working on that book in probably 2006. So that 14 years, and then, more years before I started working on it. And at that entire time, I was doing research on all different aspects of knitting. I was so fascinated about it. I was writing articles on different parts of knitting, and which meant I was studying all the time. I was then starting to teach small classes on things that I knew, like a lot of new people do, to be able to help people who just beginning. And so I was constantly moving and growing and learning, and then I was designing, and I was trying all kinds of designs and learning and learning different things about designs and different aspects of design, and on and on and on. Then I felt like I had enough. And when I made my first approach, that book was originally 500 pages. Of all the research and all the things that I had done, I had a big story to tell. And so, like they say, no test, no testimony. I had a lot of tests that I had gone through, a lot of failures. Failures, you learn a lot from failures. There's always a lot of good things that happen when things don't work. Like my first design, not fitting anybody. My first design line, not really fitting people. And me then understanding, I started right then taking measurements and keeping that design line where people could select from it as a line, and then me taking measurements and customizing it. These are all the things that you learn along the way. So by the time I got to the point where I felt like I could teach others, I had little by little by little been teaching others, because I started teaching in 95, and then being published in the magazines in 95, and then growing and moving. And then I felt like I could actually help each other. Now, I didn't start calling myself an expert. I just called myself a teacher. And even now, I still look, there's so much that I learn every day. I look at what people are doing online, and it's just remarkable. So we're all, still learning, but that was my journey.
How did the design along, like what did it give you? Like what glimpse into thinking of others did it give you? Were you surprised by any of that?
Oh, I continue to be not just surprised, but amazed at what people can come up with. Even like the newest designer, I would say, I look at a swatch or look at a pattern stitch, first think of balancing the pattern stitch and laying it out on my garment, and on and on and on. And then I took those pattern stitches that had been published on garments and other in international magazines, and then asked people to look at that, see what I had seen, and then take in their own direction. And it was just the most amazing story to see how they deconstructed patterns and moved patterns around, and took them on an angle, and all the amazing stories that came out of that. And for me to grow, because at the end of the day, I had to help them bring those to life. So each time, as in my design classes, what happened in my design classes, just to go back a little bit, before the design alongs, before the book, was that I sat through a design class by a very well-known designer. I was very new in the business, and I was trying to learn, and she was kind enough to let me look in. And at the end of that entire 4 weeks, everyone had ended up making the same type of pullover. But we're adults, and we're brilliant, and we've all lived. We're not little kids. And so I was thinking, I think we can go faster. When I started my design class as a new teacher in teaching design, what I wanted to do was to teach everyone that one story, that one silhouette in the first week, and then to let them do whatever they wanted to do. And so I learned so much more, because some people made dresses, some people made ganzis, everything, anything they wanted to do, they made, and I had to guide them through it. So that kept me learning and growing as well. And then the design alongs just took that to a whole nother level, where I walk with everyone through bringing their design ideas to life, and it continues to make my design knowledge go a little bit higher.
I actually find that fascinating, because I was watching the fashion show at Vogue Knitting, and it's basically like was based on the swatch that you provided, right? And everybody took it to a completely different way. It's like everybody saw something different in your swatch. We're surprised by that, because to me, this is like mind-blowing.
And it keeps it going, like I put out the first swatches, and for the design alongs, I put out, more swatches, but a lot of the students took like more ideas from duets. So it keeps these patterns alive. I always say that a lot of these are antique patterns, and this is a living art. And we look back and we see the ideas that someone in another century had for these, or at the turn of the 20th century, what people made with this. And then it's this timeline with these beautiful patterns has stopped at our door. And so we have a chance to throw on our ideas and give our statement there, and then it will move on. And just seeing these patterns move in one direction to the people who came into duets, then move in another direction for the people who did the design challenges, and just keeping this, keeping this antique cloth making art alive. It is just, for me, it is just such a fascinating story.
Well, let's talk about duets a little bit. How did that idea came to you? What was your vision for it?
Duets was the whole idea of what we see, and that is that these students are singing with me. So it's like, I grew up playing the piano. And so, you get on and you play like heart and soul, and you play one part and your sister plays another part, and you make it all work. And so these two sets of eyes seeing different things. And some students, you have 3 or 4 people use the same pattern, and each of them will take it in a different direction, but it all came from mine originally. And so they're all singing like a duet with me to put these beautiful finished garments or accessories, because they're garments or accessories, to put them out in the market. For those who were doing the competition, they had to do a garment. But everyone has not had to do a garment, because I do like to offer accessories as well. And the last challenge was actually an accessories challenge with a garment component. And so I didn't think a lot of people were going to do garments. I thought, a lot of people were going to do, we had a list with 7 different accessories they could do, hats, scarves, gloves, whatever. And then there was an additional amount of prize money if they did a garment. And a lot of people did garments. But to see them take those patterns and to continue to take them in another direction, that's the whole concept of this whole duet and inspiration. That's why it's called Duets and Inspirations, to have it be inspired and then to just fly with it.
Well, one of your students is a dear friend of mine, Inbal Gross, and I just recently came and saw her in Israel. And I'm amazed at her progress, because when I first met her, she was working on her very first design. And I interviewed her right after that first design. And she said, I don't know if I can call myself a designer. And this is the woman who now proudly calls herself a designer, participated in your challenges, and like grew in front of my eyes. Like, I looked at her as a designer, and it just blows my mind that she's so fierce, and she just like jumps into it and creates the most spectacular pieces. Do you feel that pride, like almost like maternal pride for each of your students when
I do. Yeah, I do. And I just love it. Because they are our future. They are what says that this art will continue to live, because they will pass it on because they're passionate. And Inval, for example, came to my knit along, and she did that colored peacoat. It was the peacoat knit along, but as I said, the anything that happens with me, a knit along becomes a design along, because then I say, just like my philosophy in class, take it in your own direction, and I'm here. If you have a question, I'm here to help you. And so she started doing an intarsia piece, and the peacoat was phenomenal. But everybody watched it, as I think we had over 2,000, like 2,600 or something like that, entries for people just talking to each other as they made their garments from that peacoat KAL. She and Duke then went on to start an online series, Duke Akiba. He was another one in that group. And he won first place. For that one, we had 3 different categories. So we had the first to finish, and Duke, and he was tearing out and learning new things and showing us all. Then we had most innovative, and Inbal won that. And then we had best newbie knitter. And then, so we had Natalie Guerrero win that one because she had been knitting for 6 months and she did that picot. It was like amazing. And so then Inbal came back and Duke as well for the design along. And the design along was then, okay, you're not following anybody's anything. You just are looking at the patterns and taking them in your own direction. And we were guiding them through that as well. I gave out a 23-page summary on design. You know, all the different aspects of things that went into thinking through your design. And while she was waiting for her yarn to come, because we had a few glitches with getting her yarn to her, she read through that. And then she started laying out her design, and she said she thought she was a designer before. And then she understood. So when her piece came, she was ready to just pick up the needles and go because she had done the entire preparation process. And that's what we try to accomplish. And that's what the students who've come into this and continued to follow and continue to participate, those are the ones that this method speaks to. And that's what I was saying before, that this method doesn't speak to everyone, but it does speak to a lot. And lots of times it's a matter of people saying, oh, I thought I did this well before, but now I understand that I could do it better and have a better outcome. And that's what resulted with her.
Well, you mentioned that when you started, you wrote down a business plan and you had the vision of what you're trying to achieve.
Yes.
Have you gone back to that business plan? Have you reread it recently?
I've never changed it, really. You know, I wrote down what I wanted to achieve with it. I've accomplished that. I wanted to work in 3 different areas because I became very fascinated with knitting, but it's like so large. So I decided lace, color, and cables. And that is primarily where I've stayed in those three areas. And everything else has grown around it. I've kept the modules. I kept 4 modules going. I still teach. I still write. I still, design, and I still do the travel and lecture series. And that those were all the modules that were part of my business plan. I mean, if I was just going to sit and knit, I just didn't think I was going to go very far. So I had to be able to say, what else can I do and how can I accomplish that? So to be able to lay out my patterns completely. And then it's like, the old philosophy, plan your work, then work your plan. So that's the business philosophy. I come out of a business background. So to plan my work and be able to just hand it out to people, I do the swatch, the first swatch. I do the whole personality. I oversee everything. But I could have 4 garments. Like if you look in the back of KDW, there are 4 different garments there. I had people knitting on all of them, and they are extremely different, and they're all complex. I had 4 different people knitting on them at the same time. And I could continue writing. I was still writing the book. So it becomes a very efficient way of working as well. And that's all a part of what my planning process has done for me. So I've not strayed very far from that.
When I talk to designers, like there is this frustration of it being a very difficult industry to make money in and to turn it into like something that you can really make a living in. Is that part of your conversation with designers when designers come to you and they said, well, I enjoy this process. I'm loving this artistic freedom of doing what I imagine to do, but how do I make it marketable? How do I make a living out of it? Do you ever have that discussion?
Yeah, I have it all the time. It's discussion with me. So it's better. It's easier now and better now. And I'm hearing wonderful stories about what people are doing than it was when I first came into the industry. And I remember I'm coming into the industry in 1992, and we're now 30 years away from that, 31 years at this point away from that. And it was an industry where very few people made a living. And if you were designing, it was, I mean, you'll hear me say that in one of my videos, I say I took a vow of poverty
Right.
and headed down the road. But it doesn't have to be like that now. There are many creative ways to do it. Two things that I have found is that you have to make a decision on what you want to do. If you want to just sit and knit and post your things online, then it's going to be hard to make a lot of money with that. But there are a lot of people out there now, so there may be ways where you can have one design. I'm hearing stories where one design, people took it and made a lot of money from it. The other part of it is that if you want to market, really market, the internet does a lot of marketing for you now, which is very good. And then it's thinking your business plan through. It's laying out a business plan and maybe not just being a knitter, but also being a marketing person on how do I really get this message out? How do I really, bring people into my world? Like you're doing interviews, somebody else may be doing something else. I don't know. But for me, I was always doing at least four things at the same time. And that was how I was able to build a business out of it.
Well, how is Shirley Paden of today is different from when you started in 92?
Well, we had something at my 10th anniversary that we put out a video that said, what would your younger self say to you? What would you think? We all have thoughts and ideas. We've all done it in different ways, whether it was starting a business, starting a career, starting a family, buying a home, changing a location of where we lived, whatever. We start out with one thought, and then we react and we move based on the different things that happen along the way. And so it's like the Robert Frost poem that says the road less traveled. That was the road that I took. But also a part of that poem, as it goes on, it says, way leads to way. And so you find yourself on a highway, for example. So he says, way leads to way. And chances are, although I think I'll come back and take the other road, more than likely I'll never come back to this point again. And that's the way the whole story has worked and works for all of us in life. And that is that you start out and you think everything's going to work in a certain way. And then different things happen. Like, for example, Knitwear Design Workshop being published and then the design alongs happening to push that along. Or, me starting out with lecturing and traveling and writing and then finding out that I want to write a book. And so all the different things that have happened along the way have kept me moving in a wonderful direction. But they're all very different in terms of what I may have thought and where I am now. That I would be, an author of two books, that I would be my own publisher. At one point, there was this desire to have a publisher. And I started with a traditional publisher, then two publishers went bankrupt. I tell that story in the Duets handbook. And then I go back to Dr. Seuss and say, you've got brains in your head, you've got feet in your shoes, and you can move in any direction you choose. And so then, I'm now a self-publishing author. Finding out that I want to reach people who maybe can't do the entire story with the math, and putting out an app. That took 4 years to get the app on the market, and the industry changing and the world changing, where when I came into this whole business, there was no internet. So the internet came in. So all these things that have gotten me to where I am, a lot of them I could not have foreseen. But I have just continued to move forward and to uh, try to become a part of whatever was happening in the world. Social media didn't exist at that point. Now we're on social media every day. And so all of that is just a part of the growth that I've seen and the continuation. I'm sure we'll continue to grow and continue to move and continue to move this antique cloth making art forward.
When you think about yourself, when you think about your journey so far, people would ask, like, is it luck? Were you in the right place at the right time? Did you have the right vision? Was somebody helping you? Do you think like people who were supposed to help you met you at the right time at the right place? Like, how much of it is nonstop work and how much of it is just luck?
I think there's some things that we can't control. There's some opportunities that happen that, I still ascribe to the philosophy that luck is the residue of design. So that, I mean, you have to be prepared if something comes your way that you can grab onto. So you have to have that design and that plan in place. And then you may be lucky because you're standing in the right place, but you've run hard. I also believe that success, hard work is the key to success. You can't get around it. If you really want to be successful, there are long days and long hours. And I'm running many modules to my business. So, there's just no way to shut the door on that. The beauty of it is I love what I do. And that there's always, it's a passion. And where there's passion, there's love. And so I always say that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, which is, the philosophy, the famous philosophy. But it's also a matter of choosing what you want to do in life, what you want to be in life. I don't think you just get lucky if you don't put the effort in. I think the universe rewards you if you put the effort in, and it is willing to give you, an extra boost when it's needed to keep you going.
Well, what's your definition of success? Like when you look back at your life, do you judge it as successful? Do you judge it like you achieved everything that was in that business plan? Do you think you just like scratching the surface and opportunities are about to open? Like, where do you see yourself in that place?
I see myself as a work in progress constantly. And so, I never sit on my laurels. You can't go forward and say, oh, I'm great. I've done this, or I've learned all that I can learn, because I'm not ready to die. And I think that's when, even then I would probably, I think I always make a joke that, God's going to send St. Peter or somebody and say, get her out of there. And I'm going to say, I'm on a deadline. Just give me 5 more minutes and the hook's going to come out, because there's always something else to do and always something else to learn. And it's always important to remain humble, and in my opinion, and to always know that you don't know everything. And I say to my students when they walk in, I say, let's leave the egos at the door. Mine's over there. So that we all start from a point of wanting to learn in both directions. I learn so much each time I teach, just right. From questions and just from people, what they bring into class. And so I can only say that I'm a work in progress, and I will continue to be that, and that I continue to strive for success. I subscribe for excellence every day. People say I'm a perfectionist, but trying to be perfect lets us understand that that's never going to happen. There's always something we didn't think of that's going to happen, but it helps us to achieve that excellence that we want. And so that's all I can bring to the table is the best that I can do. And that's all I expect from anyone else.
Well, when I talk to a lot of designers, it comes time and time again. the uncertainty of it. Because at the end of the day, you think you came up with a brilliant idea and then you publish it and crickets, right? Nothing happened. The world didn't notice your greatest design. Or you wake up and you ask yourself, why did I quit my corporate job? Why did I decide to take this hard road? Yes, I enjoy knitting, but I could have knitted on weekends. And now I don't have money to pay rent and all these things. Or you wake up and you just have no ideas. You like at creative block and you think, my greatest achievement already happened. I designed my best design and I'll never come up with anything as good.
Mm.
How do you stay positive? How do you reinvent yourself?
Because, I've lived in life long enough to know that things change. COVID came. We weren't prepared for that. We all were right enough to go up online. We went into a virtual world, which is what we're doing right now. I had been in a virtual world since 2009 when I wrote my book, 2008 actually, when I was doing GoToMeeting before Zoom. Knowing that you had to be able to have all the information together coming from different sources. But, there are things that will happen in life. I mean, just because you plan something doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just means that, you plan, but we're brilliant. We can plan something else. We can go in a different direction. We tried. The fault is in not trying. You try and you try to do your best. And if something's not working, then maybe that's not for you. When you're knocking, someone said, if God closes a door, don't keep banging on it because maybe what's behind it is not for you. Just keep moving. And that's all I can say is that this happens to be a place that I love and that I've loved being a part of. And I do love everything that's happened. Someone said, "Do you sit knitting all day?" I said, "No, right now I'm looking at key performance indicators and I'm looking at a lot of different marketing things because it's where it is now. I'm running a business and I'm not just a knitter. And you have to think like that. You have to think that any of the businesses that we look at in the world that have been around and come down from generation to generation, each generation has changed it. And they have been able to adapt to the changes of their surroundings. Like there was horse and buggy, and then there were cars, and there were this, and there were that. You look at Hermes, at one point, they were making leather goods for that whole horse and buggy train, and look at how they've grown. And that's just one example. But that is the way you have to think. And if you think that, your one design didn't work and you got accepted in a magazine, the key is that life doesn't stop. You feel you're a designer, you feel you're successful because you got accepted in a magazine, but you know what? It is a "what have you done for me lately" scenario. You got to keep being published, and you got to keep being designing, and you have to keep having that impetus and those thoughts. It's something that just keeps going. It's like we have to keep breathing, and it's just the way life is. So I'm good with that, and I think that new designers have to say not just what do I have now. Like when I started, I laid out a line. It wasn't just one design. And whenever I went in to present things to the magazines, I would always give them 5 or 6, maybe 8 different things. I didn't just make a swatch. I made swatches all year long. And when I got the call for submission, all I had to do, I didn't have to start swatching. I just pulled out, because it was always going. And I would always say to the magazine, to the editors, I'd lay everything on the table and I'd lay my swatches on top. And then I would say, this is my vision. You do whatever you want. And they would always move them around. And you have to be good enough in your craft to be able to say, that's their vision. That's their magazine. They know, their audience. Don't touch my things. But, okay, so now I have to take this swatch with this piece and I have to make it work. And to keep having those moments, because that's how you grow and change. And that's also how you grow a relationship with someone when you're a partner.
Right.
When they know that your desire is to make them successful, and so that you're successful as well. And those are things that, come with just thinking a business plan through, and then also with experience and with maturity.
Well, you know what? I always admired about you, and I don't know if people tell you about that, because when people think about you, they thinking that you're a successful book author, you're running this all these classes, and you're doing this design along. But to me, the fact that when you're saying that you gave an oath of poverty, it's that attitude that you teach some free classes, you spend time with those designers sharing your experience and sharing your wisdom. The amount of yourself you give to this community, to me, this is the success of you. This is the secret to your success. Like, I see it as that, because it's really making such an impact. And the fact that you're willing to share your spotlight and share your connections and whatever experience you acquired over these years in that career, to me, that's what makes you so successful, because people appreciate that, and people, that's why they coming back to you for more.
Thank you so much. I hope that I continue to do that. And it's just, for me, if you don't pass it on, what's the point? I mean, so you know something, so you die with it. So what have you left behind? You have to share it.
Heard there is this virtual school that you're working on.
The app, the whole idea of the app is to just facilitate walking through the steps of the design process, and to have something that will do the math for you. So you enter your sizing, and then it populates these chart maps for you that allow you to knit from those. And that's pretty much what the app is meant to do. I have a class on Craftsy that I've had since 2012, and for years I've answered questions on that class, and most of the questions have been on the calculations, where people have looked at the class, which is about 3 hours. It's about 12 modules, and still trying to do it on their own. And then they come and ask me questions. So the app grew out of, the idea of an app grew out of that. Like the Craftsy class grew out of people working with KDW by themselves and not being able to get through it all, to say, you know, what can we do? So we put the Craftsy class out there so they can look at me and listen to me teaching them all the steps. And then from the Craftsy class, seeing what was happening with people asking me a lot about the calculations, we put the app out there. So it's been a continuum in terms of growth. And that's what we will continue to do in the future. And it's always, you know, something that brings in people from all over the world. And there are always help aids out there in addition.
Do you have time to knit, just to knit for fun, just not to swatch, not to do anything, but just like, I don't know, knit a hat for yourself for that weekend?
I'm always knitting something at night. When I finish my day, I like to always knit on something, but I haven't done a project in a long time. I love to swatch, and I love to lay out calculations for design. That's where my heart lies. And so just looking at and becoming a part of the mind of the person who put that whole pattern together, to me, that is quite fascinating. And a lot of the dictionaries are not, the patterns are not balanced, but balancing the pattern and looking at how mathematically that lays out and the repeats on it. And then just looking at how that will look on the fabric. You know, I might take 4 or 5 of those. I just pulled out 2 swatching books, and they were so thick. I was like, oh my God, these are like 500 pages each. And then looking at my swatching boxes, I have like drawers and boxes of swatches, but that is where I get my joy. It's not just in finishing one project, but in always thinking about planning a series of projects. And that's why I say when, like right now, for the 30th anniversary of Piecework, I have a capelet there, and we've gotten a lot of it's for the September, it's for the autumn issue, but it was actually the release dropped last week. But just thinking that through, you know, I pulled out a swatch, did a sketch, and just I wrote an article, you know. So these are the skills that I bring together, and thinking through, going back to the theme, which was the Gilded Age. Most magazines have stories, and fitting into that story and understanding that age. All of that is what's going on. Those sorts of things are going on with me all the time. In addition to, all the marketing that we're doing or worrying about my app or thinking about rebuilding the website or, all of that. In terms of what I really love to do, designing and planning to design is a part of what just gives my soul joy.
Tell me a little bit about your team, because the amount of things you do, it's just not possible to do everything by yourself. Is it hard to delegate because you are a perfectionist and you expect perfection and you're seeking it? Like, is it hard to delegate tasks to others?
You actually, you choose a team of people, and maybe the first grouping doesn't work, that you can trust and that you feel have the same goals in mind and who have the same work ethics and that whole idea of excellence. And so, you may go through 2 or 3 people before you get them. At this point, I have a wonderful team. And so Quinn heads up the marketing team. And then we have Megan, who is just, phenomenal at working all the social media things for us. We're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. And then we have Sands, who also does a lot of the copying. She does the copywriting for us. So it's a whole story. And every day, like the first thing I do is look to see what's coming in. They're very respectful. Nothing goes out that I don't see or approve. And there's the brainstorming back and forth of, is this good? How it works? How does it look? And it's a collaborative effort. But even for knitters, people who knit with me, it's been a journey getting knitters that worked in the same way. And now I've got that all established. So people that I know are going to do exactly what I want and work just like I'm going to. And I don't I think that's a big mistake when you feel like only you can do it, because you can't. But so you have to really carefully select people who can do things for you, and you can run further, faster. And that's all a part of just a vision that helps you to grow your business.
What else brings you joy? Like, besides knitting, is there anything else in your life that you love doing?
Yeah, right now I'm very involved with 2 universities, and I gave out 2 scholarships this year to FIT to students that are going to be specializing in knitwear design and who will take that out into the world. And for my former university, Ohio Wesleyan University, I'm very involved in setting up a 5-year plan with students who are coming in who are first-generation students. There's a whole first-generation program, and I came in as a first-generation student, and I'm very involved with that. I'm a member at the patron level at a lot of the different cultural institutions around the city that I think are doing wonderful things. I think that's important, like the Metropolitan Museum or the Museum of Modern Art. Also involved with the library, because the library is free for everybody. I give to the Wiki Endowment because I think it's important to put knowledge out there for everyone. And I have a group of other charities that I'm involved with and give money to. And those are all things that I feel will help to make this world a better place. And that when I'm no longer here, when I'm singing on a heavenly choir, that the whole purpose will be how much light have I been able to leave behind. And that's all very important to me. And those are other interests that I happen to have.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your story with me today, because I loved having you on my channel and I loved getting a glimpse into the works of Shirley Paden and her team.
Thank you.
And I hope more designers will join your program and be encouraged by that, be encouraged to try something new and to learn some new skills. And I think you doing wonderful things by sharing your knowledge and encouraging others to be their best.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I wish you every success.
Thank you. Shirley very generously offered 50% discount on both of her books in electronic format to the viewers of my channel. I'll put all the information in the description of this video so you can get those copies for yourself. And until next time, happy crafting.
Yes, Shirley, it's Inval. I just wanted to say thank you because it's the last time that we're gonna speak, and I wanted to say how much I appreciate everything, the whole experience, because I had some problems with the yarn and you took care of it in just such a beautiful way, and everything was, you kept calming me down and say everything is gonna be okay, and just handling everything as fast as you could. And I know that you're very, very busy, and I just learned so much. I thought I knew how to design, and then I realized I didn't know anything. And now I feel it's free of charge, and we don't pay you, and it's amazing. It's a class, and I really want to say thank you.
Thank you.